Hello everyone, let's do this last chapter together. The final chapter of a truly epic story of rebuilding and reform. Nehemiah chapter 13. Now, if you've been following along, you know Nehemiah has been on an incredible journey. He left a high-ranking position in the Persian court, returned to Jerusalem, and led the people in rebuilding the city walls against all odds. After that, he led a major spiritual revival. The people recommitted themselves to God, signed a covenant, and promised to follow his laws. It was a high point, a moment of triumph and rededication. So, Nehemiah heads back to Persia to report to King Artaxerxes, probably feeling pretty good about the state of Jerusalem. He was gone for a while, the text isn't specific, but it was likely several years. When he finally gets permission to return to Jerusalem, he's in for a rude awakening. It's like a parent leaving the kids home for the weekend, only to come back and find the house completely trashed. The first thing he discovers is shocking. Eliashib, the high priest, the spiritual leader of the people, had given a room right inside the temple courts to Tobiah the Ammonite. Remember Tobiah? He was one of the main villains of this story, constantly trying to stop the wall from being rebuilt. And now, he has a VIP suite in the house of God. This wasn't just some storage room. It was where the offerings for the Levites and temple workers were supposed to be kept. Nehemiah is furious. He literally throws all of Tobiah's furniture out and orders the rooms to be purified. He doesn't just ask politely. He takes decisive action to cleanse God's house. But the problems don't stop there. Because the people had stopped bringing their tithes, the Levites and the temple singers, the very people who were supposed to be leading worship, had abandoned their posts. They had to go back to their own fields to make a living. The temple services had basically ground to a halt. Can you imagine? All that hard work, all those promises, and the system was already falling apart, so Nehemiah confronts the officials. He asks them, why is the house of God neglected? He doesn't mince words. He then organizes everything again, appoints trustworthy treasurers, and makes sure the Levites get their provisions so they can return to their duties. Next up, Nehemiah tackles the issue of the Sabbath. He's walking around on the Sabbath and sees people working treading winnow presses, bringing in grain and selling all sorts of goods right in Jerusalem. Merchants from Tyre were even selling fish and other products. The holy day had just become another market day. The commitment to rest and honor God was completely forgotten. Nehemiah confronts the nobles of Judah, calling them out for profaning the Sabbath. He reminds them that this very kind of disobedience is what led their ancestors into exile. He's not just making a suggestion. He's connecting their actions to their history and their future. So, he orders the city gates to be shut before the Sabbath begins and not reopened until it's over. He even posts his own servants at the gates to make sure no merchandise comes in. When the merchants try to camp outside the walls, he warns them off, threatening to use force if they do it again. Talk about a man of action. Finally, Nehemiah addresses another major issue: intermarriage with foreign women. He sees that many Jewish men had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. This wasn't just a cultural issue. The problem was that their children weren't even learning to speak the Jewish language. And more importantly, they weren't being raised to know and follow God. The spiritual identity of the next generation was at stake. This was a direct violation of the covenant they had just sworn to uphold. Nehemiah's reaction is intense. He confronts them, calls down curses on them. He even physically disciplines some of them and pulls out their hair. It's a bit extreme for our standards, but it shows the depth of his passion and his desperation to turn the people back to God. He even chases away a grandson of the high priest, who had married the daughter of another one of his enemies, Sanballat. For Nehemiah, purity in the priesthood and in the community was non-negotiable. Throughout this chapter, Nehemiah repeatedly prays, "Remember me, O my God, for good." He's not seeking glory for himself, but he's asking God to see his efforts, to recognize his zeal for God's house and God's people. Nehemiah 13 is a powerful and perhaps a bit sobering conclusion. It shows us that reform isn't a one-time event. It requires constant vigilance, courageous leadership, and a willingness to confront sin, even when it's uncomfortable. It's a reminder that our hearts can easily drift, and we need to be intentional about staying true to our commitments. What a story of leadership and the constant need for reform. Thanks so much for watching. If this video resonated with you, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more content like this. See you in the next one.